On Tuesday, May 21st, the Karen Read trial continued with day 15 of testimony. As expected, we saw the cross-examination of one witness, Jennifer McCabe. It was a half day, so we didn't see the end of her cross-examination, but the best way that I can think of to characterize her cross so far was a war of attrition. She was combative and sarcastic and fought about everything, including things that really didn't matter. And I think that in a lot of ways, she played right into the defense's strategy. Let's get into it. Now, before we jump into this, I do want to say that later in this video, I am going to be telling you a bit about this video's sponsor, FlexiSpot, and a great deal that they're having on their C7 premium ergonomic office chairs. But first, let's talk about day 15. So to start, this recap is made a little bit more difficult because of the fact that it was not the kind of cross-examination where there's one or two singular Hollywood movie type of moments. You know what I mean, when there's a gradual buildup in the cross-examination where the witness finally shouts across the room, "You can't handle the truth." We've had some moments in this trial, although not quite that dramatic, but that followed a similar sort of singular apex kind of point. This cross-examination, however, is different because Jackson has taken the strategy of jumping around across different subjects to slowly grind down Jennifer McCabe. On the one hand, for me personally, it makes paying attention a bit more difficult because it's not so much of a linear progression. And it could actually do the same thing to the jury. It also makes it a little bit more difficult to find clips from key moments to highlight these important points for people who miss the testimony. But that's really just a personal problem for me. However, what I can say is that this was, in my opinion, actually a very effective cross-examination for this particular witness. And that's because one thing about Jennifer McCabe is that her direct examination at times felt like her testimony was somewhat rehearsed, as she appeared to be sort of mentally checking boxes in her head as she testified on direct. So for a witness like that, taking the chaos approach to cross-examination can actually be beneficial because you can completely throw them off their game. This can reveal all kinds of things, like a change in their personality. It's really hard to keep a mask on when you're having to follow along on someone else's wild ride, after all. It can also more easily reveal some inconsistencies, as it can make it harder for the witness to sort of tap dance their way out of them. And here, I do think that both of these things happen. At the end of day 5, we had seen a completely different Jennifer McCabe than we saw on day 14. Like I mentioned earlier, she was combative. She wanted to fight Jackson on literally every single point, even the ones that don't really matter. She was also very snarky and sarcastic and passive-aggressive at times. And she also seemed to have detected pretty early on that basically every question that Jackson was going to ask her was in fact backed up by some kind of receipt that he had in his hand, which could and likely would reveal an inconsistency in her or someone else's testimony. And so she developed this habit where Jackson would ask Jen a tough question, and instead of answering from her memory, she would essentially demand to see the receipt before she gave an answer. And the thing is, she didn't seem to want to see the receipt so that she could align her current testimony with what she had previously said, for example. Rather, it seemed that she wanted to see these receipts so that she could argue with Jackson about his receipts. And here's the thing. She might think that this is a good way to win one over the attorney of the opposing side. In fact, she may have walked out of court yesterday thinking, I showed him. But as an objective observer of this trial, I gotta say, this does not look good on her. Now, keep in mind, in my day 14 recap, I said that she came across pretty well and that she got some points on the board for the prosecution, and let's see how cross-examination goes. And in response, I got some comments giving pushback from the pro Karen Read side, some going as far as to say that I had lost all credibility because I had said some positive things about the prosecution. But again, I am calling this trial as I see it on a shot-by-shot basis, regardless of whether people approve of my opinions. And the thing about Jen's habit of needing to see the receipt before she gives an answer on the witness stand, well, number one, it's improper. And I do wish that Jackson had nailed her down with an answer, some kind of answer, even if it's, evidence of a strong case of cross-examnesia before showing her the receipt. That's what's generally supposed to be done procedurally, because every time she asks to see the receipt, it's supposed to be to refresh her recollection. And if she doesn't say that her recollection needs to be refreshed, it's improper to actually show her the receipt. But Jackson may have even been somewhat purposeful in how sort of loose he was with this sort of procedure. I say that because aside from the procedural part of this, the way that she started to not so much ask to see the receipt, but say, I would like to see the receipt. Pro-prosecution people are probably going to hate me for saying this, but it had, I'd like to speak to your manager kind of vibes. And the repetition of this throughout the 4 hours of her cross-examination on day 15 started to make me wonder how she treats people who work in the service industry. And then that also makes me wonder, is there anyone on the jury who works or has worked as a waiter or hotel concierge or anything else like that? If there are, they might actually pick up on those vibes and really start to dislike Jen and decide that they don't trust her. And in a lot of ways, this was not good for the prosecution. Aside from the demanding to speak to your manager aspect, one of the biggest takeaways to me was how her performance on the witness stand has actually confirmed one of the defense's themes. Remember that all the way back on day 1, when I was talking about opening statements and how this is the time to introduce a theme or maybe several themes that can be echoed throughout the trial to reinforce your narrative all the way up until closing arguments. And a big theme that the defense had in their opening statements was that Karen Read was this outsider and that the Alberts and the McCabes were all part of this insular sort of family in-group. If you're not in, you are out. We saw an echo of this on day 14 with Matt McCabe and the Asian house text. And on day 15, this now came out in a very illustrative way with how Jen McCabe talked about her new BFF, Kerry Roberts. And I'm going to get into the details of that in just a minute, but first, I have to thank this video sponsor. But before I get into that, this video is sponsored by FlexiSpot. You know, all of these long hours that I've been spending live streaming trials and filming recaps can really take a toll on my back. And for me particularly, doing it all with a growing baby bump comes with its own delights, but also challenges. And that's why I was so excited when FlexiSpot reached out to sponsor a video to promote their C7 Premium Ergonomic office chair. You see, over the years, I've been slowly upgrading my office seating, and I can tell you that this is genuinely the best chair yet. The lumbar support is really helpful for these long hours sitting, and it gives you so many ways to adjust the chair to your specific personal preferences. You can adjust the lumbar, the height, how forward the seat sits, where the headrest hits, you can recline the chair, and it has a footrest that you can use. And that last one is really important to me personally right now because since I became pregnant, I learned that swelling in feet and lower legs is totally a common thing and something to kind of watch out for and be concerned for. And that's why one of my favorite parts about this chair is the fact that it comes with an adjustable footrest. You guys have no idea about this, but I've spent already quite a few hours live streaming the Karen Read trial with my feet up to maintain good circulation. It gives me peace of mind and it gives me several ways to adjust my seating over time so that I can continue to focus on what really matters, the substance of the trial, of course. And I have to say my comfort level during these streams really has gone way up since I got this chair. Now, when it arrived, it did require some assembly, but the instructions were really simple and easy to follow, and I think I managed to put it together in like 30 minutes while taking my time. And in the end, I got a super sturdy chair that rolls very smoothly and is just really comfortable to sit in. Even the cats agree. So if you need something to upgrade your seating experience, be sure to check out the C7 chair at the link in the description below and use the code BDC7 for up to 60% off. And thanks again to FlexiSpot for sponsoring this video. Okay, back to Jen's testimony about her new BFF, Kerry Roberts. Although this part actually came up more towards the end of the day, I'm talking about it first because it left such an impression on me for who Jen McCabe really is. Here's what went down. On cross-examination, Alan Jackson asked in a number of different contexts about Jen McCabe essentially having hands on what other people testified to or statements that they gave to the police. One of these examples was Kerry Roberts. Now, oddly enough, Jen testified that she didn't even have Kerry Roberts' phone number until the end of the day on January 29th, 2022. In fact, there was an early fight in the cross-examination about why she was so insistent on getting Kerry's phone number from Karen Read on January 29th, 2022. Jen maintained that she wanted to know how Kerry was doing and more specifically how John was doing, since Kerry had gone with the O'Keefe family to the hospital to see John. But it was pointed out that Jen at that time already had John's mom's phone number, and she said that she didn't want to call John's mom, she wanted to call Kerry. Anyway, she ended up getting Kerry's number by the end of the day. And yet, for some weird reason, Jen and Kerry were spending quite a bit of time together in the days that followed. On January 30th, 2022, Jen, for some reason, went with Kerry to drop Kerry's daughter off on a play date with the daughter of none other than Officer Michael Lank. And not only that, but on that day, Jen and Kerry then spent about an hour in the car at Officer Lank's house talking with Officer Lank's wife about what had happened the day before. When asked about why they spent so long sitting there in the car talking with Officer Lank's wife, Jen basically derisively said, "Kerry likes to talk. She's a talker."
During this meeting, did Mr. Lally tell you one of the things that's going to be coming is you had an off-the-books meeting at Lank's house for 45 minutes. Did he tell you that?
No, that's not how I was told.
Did he tell you that the defense had uncovered a report that established that you were actually at Michael Lank's house for 45 minutes that had never been reported to the defense or the prosecution before the phone extraction had been done? Did he tell you that?
I was asked, oh, were you at Michael Lank's on the 30th?
So you've had a lot of time to come up with a story about why you were at Michael Lank's, correct?
Objection.
I'll allow it.
I didn't need time to make up a story because I have the truth of why we went.
And the truth, according to you, is you pulled up at Michael Lank's house. The first responding officer and friends of the Alberts had a meeting with him the next day that was never reported to anybody for any purpose.
I
Just met with his wife out in the car while the car was running for 45 minutes to an hour. That's your story.
It's not a story, it's the truth. Kerry dropped her daughter off. The wife came out. Kerry is a talker. They started talking. A tragedy had happened the day before.
It is interesting, would you not agree, that the day before you had this off-the-books meeting at Michael Lank's house, Nicole Albert says, we'll get more info tomorrow, meaning the very day you show up at Lank's house.
Again, I never spoke with Mike Lank at his house. It was not an off-the-books meeting. It was Kerry dropping her daughter at one of her good friends' house, whose husband happens to be a Canton cop. That is what it is. That is the truth.
A lot of coincidences.
Objection.
Sustained.
And mind you, this wasn't the only time that Jackson and Jen had an exchange like this, talking about Kerry Roberts, where Jen seemed to throw Kerry under the bus. There was also the subject of Kerry Roberts giving multiple statements to the police from Kerry Roberts' living room. And during that part of the questioning, Jen was almost spitting things at Jackson about Kerry.
So either way, whether she was on the phone with the police or sitting there in your living room with the police, you were listening to her and reporting back to the group, she's telling them everything.
No, it's not correct. The one that she did with the police, she did in the other room. And the one she did on the phone, I said, she's telling them everything.
I know.
Because Kerry is an extremely blunt person, and she was giving personal feelings about the situation. And I was horrified by it.
To the police.
To the police.
And you're listening.
I heard a statement she said that horrified me.
And then you're reporting it back to the group, weren't you?
That one thing she stated, I reported back to the group, yes.
So you're listening in on a police interview, correct?
It was a phone call.
One side of it, right?
It was a phone call.
You're listening in on a police interview, one side of it, correct?
Correct.
You're eavesdropping on that interview, correct?
I'm sitting with her and she's taking the call.
And then you're reporting that interview back, or her success in that interview, in your mind, back to the group involving Brian Albert, Nicole Albert, and Matt McCabe. Isn't that what you're doing?
Objection.
I'll allow it.
I absolutely not. That is not how it went. I was horrified because Kerry's a blunt person, not like me. And she had made a comment about Miss Reed and Mr. O'Keefe's relationship. And I was shocked and horrified that she said it the way that she did.
You were so shocked and horrified that
I said, oh my God, she's telling them everything. Yes.
you decided it was so important that you needed to report that back to Brian Albert and his friends. His family.
I was horrified.
So you reported that back.
Yes, I said she told them everything.
When you were first confronted with these messages at a separate proceeding in June of 2023, you claimed that you couldn't remember what that exchange was about, correct?
Correct.
And now you just all of a sudden have this newfound memory of exactly what that text message was referring to, correct?
Objection.
I'll allow it.
Yes, because Kerry Roberts said a statement and it jogged. I said, oh my God, that's what I meant when I said she said everything.
When did she say this statement?
Probably in the fall. She has made this statement a few times in reference to Karen.
You and Kerry Roberts are still coordinating your statements together.
Oh, no, we're not. It's just an opinion she has of Miss Reed.
And all of a sudden that became your, quote, everything, all this stuff.
It didn't just become it. I forgot that I had written it, and one day Kerry made the statement, and I'm sure it happens to everyone. You forget something, and then you're like, oh my God, that's what it was.
I'm not sure if that happens to everyone.
Objection.
Sustained.
Let me ask you a different question. When you were asked under oath a year ago, when things were fresher in your mind, you were asked specifically what you were referring to, and your answer was, I have no idea, correct?
Correct.
Because you didn't want to tell them that you had coordinated your statement with Kerry Roberts. Isn't that right?
No, that is not right. I did not remember what it was.
Went on to be asked specifically, do you know who you were referring to? And you said, maybe Kerry, maybe. I'm talking to Kerry. And the question was, but you don't recall this text? And your answer was, I don't remember. That's what you testified to a year ago, correct?
Correct.
But now you're talking about some memory of a disparaging comment that Kerry Roberts has about my client. And that's the everything in your mind.
Yes, the things that she was saying.
Quite obviously, what you were referring to in that text in real time, Ms. McCabe, was that Kerry Roberts was telling the police, quote, everything that you had laid out for her in this timeline meeting you had with her, correct?
Objection.
So it's sustained as to that form. You can ask that question in a proper way.
The everything you referred to in that text in real time was what you had worked out with Kerry in that timeline meeting, wasn't it? That was the everything you were referring to, correct?
Incorrect. We never worked together to come up with a story. We have the facts, and the everything was a comment about your client.
You went on in your group chat with Brian Albert, Nicole Albert, and Matt McCabe to give running updates about whether or not Kerry Roberts was actually following the script, correct?
Incorrect. There was no script.
167. Matt McCabe texted the group, Brian, comma, sitting separate, end quote, correct?
Yes.
It sounds like Matt McCabe is reporting back to Brian Albert, following your instructions, we're sitting separately.
Objection.
Sustained.
One minute later, Brian Albert had a one-word response to the Brian sitting separate, correct?
Yes.
What was that one-word response?
Okay.
So it sounded like he was giving his approval for where people were situated in that meeting, correct?
Objection.
Sustained.
At page 2168, 515.
It's very hard to just look at two texts and try to understand what the context is.
Ms. McCabe, if you don't understand a question that I have, just let me know. But otherwise, let me ask a question. On page 20,
Why was Kerry in Jen's living room to give these police statements as opposed to, I don't know, at Canton PD station or Kerry's own home? That's something that has not been explained. And it looks weird, admittedly. And again, they weren't even familiar enough before all of this happened for Jen to even have Kerry's phone number. Now, all of this testimony does two things. Number one, it makes Jen look like she's, I don't know, the Canton queen bee who needs to control the narrative of everyone around her. But number two, and relatedly, she comes across specifically as basically a two-faced Regina George from Mean Girls who is willing to use people when they're helpful to her needs, but then discard them callously at the first opportunity when it's convenient.
Oh my God, I love your skirt. Where did you get it?
It was my mom's in the 80s.
Vintage. So adorable.
Thanks.
That is the ugliest effing skirt I've ever seen. Oh my God, I love your bracelet. Where did you get it?
So are you gonna send any candy canes?
No, I don't send them, I just get them. So you better send me one, biatch. Love ya.
And this all ties back to the defense theme because, hey, Kerry Roberts is helpful to the Alberts and the McCabes, but she's not one of them. As much as Kerry is likely to testify in a way that's helpful to the prosecution, she is an outsider to the family, so she too can be discarded in the same way that Karen is. That's at least the message that the defense would love the jury to receive and adopt. And the thing is, it seems like there's no witness that is better to help reestablish that theme so far than Jen McCabe. And all of that would have been within the control of Jen McCabe in terms of how she decided to come across on the witness stand. Okay, so what else did they go over on cross-examination? Let's go through them. One of the main subjects was Jen's placement of Brian Higgins' Jeep in connection with Karen Reed's SUV and Ryan Nagel's pickup truck. Like Matt, Jen's testimony about this differs from basically all of the other witnesses in that she testified that the Jeep was parked between the SUV and the pickup truck. But Jackson showed her early on in this cross-examination that he had receipts that revealed an inconsistency on this. Apparently, when Trooper Michael Proctor interviewed Jen on January 29th, 2022, she said nothing about the Jeep. And when confronted with Proctor's report, she fought Jackson on it, basically throwing the lead investigator under the bus.
You indicated that that Jeep was just a little bit in front of the mailbox, meaning about there, correct?
Yes.
And the rear end of that Jeep would be butting up against the driveway,
Yes.
or at least the line of the driveway, correct?
Yes.
That's quite a bit of detail about where that Jeep was. Would you agree?
No, because I drove down the street and I took a left into the driveway and there was a Jeep there.
Okay. What I'm asking is, you didn't just say, your memory is not just somewhere in front of the house. It's literally right in front of the mailbox, the front end of it, adjoining the line of the driveway, correct?
Yes,
That detail obviously stuck out in your mind.
it did because I was wondering whose Jeep it was.
Did you discuss that detail with your husband at any point?
Not sure.
You're not sure? You might have.
I'm not sure if I said whose Jeep is that.
No, I don't mean then. I mean between then and now, have you and Mr. McCabe ever discussed where that Jeep was, or your memories of where that Jeep was?
Possibly.
You're aware that he put the Jeep in the exact same place that you did.
Objection.
Are you aware of that?
I am. Oh, wait, no. Excuse me. Repeat the question?
You're aware that he puts the Jeep in the exact same spot you just put the Jeep, right in front of that mailbox, right?
I know he knows where the Jeep was. I'm not aware what he said in here.
Does he know where the Jeep was because you told him what to say about the Jeep?
Absolutely not. It's because we drove together in the car and I asked. I possibly could have asked.
One at a time, please, ma'am.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to step on your words. I thought you...
That's okay. You can continue.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
I don't think we got your answer, though.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Madam Court Reporter was asking for your answer.
Can you repeat your answer?
To the question of did he know where the Jeep was?
Whether or not you told him where the Jeep was.
I did not need to tell Matt where the Jeep was. He knew because we were in the car together.
But you two discussed it.
When are you asking?
At any time between January 29th and today.
I'm sure we have, yes.
You were also interviewed by Trooper Proctor on January 29th, 2022, correct?
Yes.
And you were asked a series of open-ended questions. What did you see and where did you see it, correct?
Yes.
Nobody put any words in your mouth.
No.
Nobody told you what to say at that time.
No.
And you told Trooper Proctor that when you arrived at the scene, after you got there, you, quote, first observed the vehicle, meaning Miss Reed's SUV, parked on the street by the driveway facing the direction of Chapman. Correct?
Do you have something I can look at to refresh my memory?
Sure. Do you not have a memory of exactly what you told Trooper Proctor?
Well, I know what
Just yes or no? You need your memory refreshed?
I would like to see what the report says, please.
Permission? Yes. Thank you. Do you have that, does that refresh your recollection?
Yes, I know I told,
All I'm asking you, I'm so sorry to do this, I don't mean to be rude. I'm just asking you, does that or does that not refresh your recollection?
regarding,
What you said to Trooper Proctor on the 29th.
well, I know what I said to Proctor Trooper on the 29th.
Okay. I have to do it this way, it's court rules. Does that help you with your recollection of what you told Trooper Proctor?
I didn't tell I told Trooper Proctor the car was outside when I looked at the front door and was straight outside.
Okay. I can't quite get the answer I'm looking for. The court is going to require me to ask this question again. Does that refresh your recollection, yes or no, as to what you told Trooper Proctor? Yes.
I did not say this to Trooper Proctor, no.
It doesn't help you.
No.
Okay. May I approach?
Yes.
Thank you. So you did speak to Trooper Proctor on the 29th, correct?
Correct.
All right. And Trooper Proctor asked you some very specific questions about where things were, correct?
Correct.
Focused on Miss Reed's SUV, didn't he? Asked you questions about where Miss Reed's SUV
If you
was.
can show me in the report.
Just read it.
So just off of what I just read, is that what you're going off of? Yes?
I'm asking for your memory. You're testifying.
Yes, so my memory is exactly where the car was.
Hold on. So it's very important that both of you, one person at a time, speaks.
Okay.
Madam Court Reporter has to do what you're both saying, and she can't do it simultaneously. So the best way to do that is, Ms. McCabe, just let counsel ask the question
Okay.
and then you answer. And if it takes a lot more time than we expect it to take, it does.
Okay.
So just
Thanks.
go ahead, Mr. Jackson.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'll slow it down. Did you talk to Trooper Proctor about where the SUV was?
Yes.
Thank you. And he asked you questions about where it was situated outside, correct?
Yes.
And you told him that you first observed it parked on the street by the driveway facing the direction of Chapman, correct?
I told him that when I looked out the front door, the car was straight ahead. And yes, it was facing up Chapman.
But you left out a little part by the driveway, correct?
That could have been his interpretation or an error on his part.
I see. So Trooper Proctor is wrong about what you said.
Objection.
No, I'll let him have it. Do you think he's wrong about what you said?
I 100% said it was straight out the front door.
Okay.
So despite what the report says, Jennifer McCabe either told him about the Jeep or didn't tell him about the Jeep, but only because she wasn't specifically asked about the Jeep. And really, it's unclear which one of those is the truth when the witness is saying basically both at the same time. Anyway, Jackson also asked Jen about her daughter Allison McCabe's whereabouts after she dropped Colin off at his home. And to lay this out, Jackson brought up Jen's prior testimony from a grand jury hearing to show that she had previously said that Life 360 is a very reliable tool for parents to keep tabs on their kids. But now, suddenly when that tool shows that her daughter is not where she testified to having been, it's not that the daughter was lying, it's that the data is suddenly wrong. Then Jackson asked Jen about Chloe, the Albert's former German Shepherd. When Jen supposedly burst into the room on the morning of January 29th, 2022 to wake up Brian and Nicole Albert, no one can seem to remember the reaction of the dog. Jen was apparently hysterical and loud and rushing and And yet, that didn't seem to alarm the dog that had to be rehomed after attacking another dog and its owner, hospitalizing the owner. That seems to suggest that this dog carries a certain amount of anxiety and perhaps even protectiveness. So it does seem to fit kind of weird with this whole situation. And so this brings up a whole other question. Did this interaction in the bedroom not actually happen? Or did it happen, but the dog was somehow just not in the room? And if so, what happened to Chloe? Where was she at this time? And why was she not sleeping in the room that she typically would sleep in every single night? Maybe that ends up being a total side quest rabbit hole that doesn't actually lead to anything substantive. But it's an interesting question that suddenly came up. Now, like I said, Jackson did jump around a bit, and so here he then revisited the Jeep and the SUV topic. And the biggest point that Jackson made here was the fact that Jen was looking outside at Karen's SUV multiple times, texting with John about where they were to park and come inside. And yet, when she was asked as to whether or not she saw a body out there at any point, or any kind of status of a 6'2" man, she tried to weasel out of the answer, saying, "I was focused on Karen's SUV. I didn't notice anything else really." But Jackson was not about to let this go uncrossed.
You're indicating that you're trying to communicate with the occupant of the SUV that was sitting, what would you say, 30 feet outside the front door?
I'm not good with distance.
It's further than you and I are from each other, correct?
Correct.
At least double that, right?
Correct.
Okay, so could you give me, maybe yards are easier, like 10 yards, 15 yards?
Again, I'm not good with measurements.
Okay. Just right outside the front door, though. Within,
Straight outside, yes.
well, straight outside until it moved.
To the front door. Of the front door is where it was.
Ms. McCabe, straight outside until it moved, according to you, correct?
Yes, and then it moved. Correct.
And then moved a second time, correct?
Correct. It moved to the flagpole, and then it moved up again.
Okay. Then you indicated that you had an absolutely clear view of the SUV. You were asked those questions, correct?
If I had a clear view,
Clear view.
I could see the car out front. Yes.
You were asked, you were looking out the front door of the house. Your answer was, uh-huh. You were asked, and there's a window in that door, right? Answer, it was opened. Yeah. Question, so you had a clear view outside. Answer, a clear view outside. Yes. Remember that?
Yes.
Okay. And is that your memory? You had a clear view?
I had a clear view of Karen's vehicle outside. Correct.
And then you reiterated that with the following exchange. Question, was the amount of snow coming
Objection,
down
Your Honor.
sufficient?
So let's hear the question.
Was the amount of snow coming down sufficient to obstruct your view of the vehicle, or did you have a clear view of it? Answer, I had a good view of it.
Objection.
The objection is as to the form of the question and the reading.
No, that's okay. I'm going to allow the question.
Was that your testimony?
Yes.
So not only did you have a clear view, you indicated in your words you had a good view of it, right?
Correct.
Then you noticed that the SUV was gone after the 12:45 text, right?
Correct.
So you're looking at that SUV over the course of between the beginning text and the end text. It's about 19 minutes, right? 12:27 or so to 12:45, 18, 19 minutes, something like that, correct?
Correct.
I mean, maybe add a minute because you got back up and didn't text, and the SUV was gone, right?
Correct.
So you would agree, we just do some basic math, you're looking at that SUV on average about every 3.5 minutes.
I guess I'm. If you want to pull out the times and you can look at them.
Well, we talked about the times, and you agreed that you were texting between 12:27 and 12:45,
Correct.
right? So if you were just to divide that by 5 times, getting up and looking, I don't know, I'm doing the math in my head, maybe it's every 3 minutes or so.
Correct.
At no time did you hear any noise or sound outside that was unusual? Caught your
No.
attention? You didn't hear any squealing of tires or squealing of brakes?
No.
You didn't hear any screaming or yelling?
No.
You didn't hear any loud voices or foul language or doors slammed?
No.
You didn't hear any verbal argument or the revving of an engine, anything like that?
No.
As a matter of fact, you didn't hear any collision or crash, did you?
No.
As a matter of fact, the entire time that you looked out at that vehicle with that clear and that good view, you didn't see anything out of the ordinary, did you?
No.
And you would agree with me, as you looked at the SUV, you're looking over the lawn to the SUV out at the street, correct?
Correct.
There was no obstruction between you and the SUV. You've already testified to that, is that right?
Correct.
And you could see everything in your field of view.
Correct.
And then you saw the SUV gone. It had driven away after 12:45.
Correct.
So I have a question, Ms. McCabe.
Mm-hmm.
Where was the body?
I have no idea. I'm assuming the body was on the front lawn.
The problem with that is you were looking at the front lawn, weren't you?
I was looking at the vehicle and where it had moved.
You know what field of view is?
Would you like to explain it?
You had a clear and good view across that lawn to the SUV, didn't you?
When it was straight out, I did, yes.
You had a clear and good view of that SUV the entire time until it left, didn't you?
I could see the black SUV, correct.
Nothing was obstructing your vision.
I wasn't looking at the ground.
I didn't ask you about the ground yet. We'll get to the ground. Nothing was obstructing your vision, was it?
No.
So you had a clear and good, your words, not mine, a clear and good view of the SUV
Yes.
and everything in front of it.
I never said everything in front of it. I saw the SUV. It's black. It has lights on. And as it moved, I could see it with its lights.
And you had a clear view of everything between you and the SUV. All the things closer to you and the SUV.
I wouldn't say that.
So your view was obstructed on what was between you and the SUV, but not obstructed on the SUV?
That's not what I was saying.
No, of course not. Because if you had a clear field of view to the SUV, you could see everything in front of it as well, meaning between you and the SUV as well.
If I'm looking straight out at an SUV, I'm not looking down at the ground.
Let me ask you a question about that. You're focusing right now on my face
Yes.
as you're answering these questions. Mm-hmm. You think you'd see, I don't know, an alligator sitting in front of me if it was there?
Objection, Your Honor.
You think you would see something? Can you clearly see that there is nothing between you and me except a podium?
Yes. Well, there's a table.
And you don't have to look down to see that, right?
Correct.
You're looking directly in my face, but you can see things that are between you and me because you have a field of vision, right?
Objection.
Okay, so now we got to the next day when Karen arrived at the McCabe house and they went and started looking for John. One interesting point that came up was the fact that when they went to John's house, Jen had noticed that there were blankets and pillows on the couch, and Jackson pointed out that this could have suggested that Karen slept there that night. In contrast, the main bedroom had a bed that was very neatly made. So it would seem that Karen didn't actually go to bed the night before. She essentially stayed up waiting for John to come home. And this could support the idea that this whole thing of John not coming home was totally abnormal to Karen. And that in turn can help to explain how she got so spun up so early on about him not being back by a certain hour. But I know that people differ in their opinion on that specific part. So I don't know. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Anyway, then we got to Jen's testimony about Karen's supposed admission. I hit him. And this was a very big moment in the cross-examination. Remember that on direct examination, she had testified that Karen earlier on was saying, did I hit him? Could I have hit him? As a question. And Jen testified that when Karen spoke with the paramedic, this evolved into affirmatively stating, I hit him. And I said in the day 14 recap that the defense would have to contend with this because if the jury believes that Karen Reed did in fact make this admission, it could be game over for the defense. Well, they contended with it all right. And in my opinion, I think they disposed of it pretty well. On cross-examination, what became clear was that Jen's testimony about this specific point was very inconsistent with what Jen had previously testified about this.
My question is, isn't it true that in April of 2022, you testified no fewer than 12 times, 12 separate statements you gave, about what my client's statements were, either at the scene or in the car ride on the leading up to go into the scene. You remember that?
I do.
Okay, so on page 190 of what you're looking at, these should all be highlighted.
It is.
You testified that my client said to you over the phone at 4:53 a.m., she asked the question, did I hit him? You see that?
I do.
Number two, on page 192, talking about when y'all were in the car on the way to the scene, Karen asked the question, could I have hit him? You see that?
Yes.
Page 193, lines 1 through 2. You testified that in the car, once again, she asked the question, could she have hit him? You were relaying that, meaning could I have hit him, correct?
Correct.
Page 193, line 23. In John's driveway, she asked the question, quote, and she is asking if she could have hit him.
Yes.
Page 201, driving to Fairview. She asked the question, what if I hit him? And could I have hit him? Correct?
Correct.
Page 202, lines 1 through 2. While driving to Fairview, she asked the question, could I have hit him?
Correct.
Page 208, lines 24 through 25, outside at Fairview, she asked the question, did I hit him? And went on to ask, could I have hit him? Correct?
Correct.
And your testimony was also on page 208 that Karen was yelling nonstop in front of the female EMT, did I hit him? Could I have hit him? Is he dead? Correct?
Correct.
May I approach?
Yes.
That's 12 times that you reiterated under oath, under penalty of perjury, in April of 2022, what my client's statements were, either at the scene or leading up to getting to the scene. Correct?
Correct.
Every single one of those, 12 separate times, you indicated that she asked a question, something like, could I have hit him or did I hit him? Correct?
Correct.
Not one time in that testimony did you say she declared, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. Did you?
The questions that were asked, when she said, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him, that was at the scene in response to an officer asking questions. What I just read was us when she first called me, or when we were driving in the car, or when we were at John's house. So I was answering the question that I was asked.
So you believe that you weren't asked the question, did she say to an officer, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him? And if you're not asked the question, did she say to an officer, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him? You're not going to volunteer that she said, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. That's your testimony.
No, that's not. My testimony is, an officer was asking her what his name was and different things about him. And at that point, she was saying, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him.
Which officer?
I do not recall.
Well, you recall the I hit him. You just told me that was the most impactful thing in the morning.
It was shocking.
So what officer did she say this to, supposedly?
I was more focused on her and her hysteria than which officer was asking the question.
So you have no idea who the officer was even, correct?
I'm not sure which officer was asking her. It could have been an EMT. Someone said, what is his name? Does he have medical conditions? How old is he?
But you were asked that question, ma'am. On page 208, you were asked what she said in front of the female EMT who was asking her questions. And her answer was, your answer was, she said, did I hit him? Could I have hit him? Is he dead? Is that right?
That is correct.
That might have been a good time to offer up that she confessed, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him, right?
Objection.
Anyway, Jackson then also played a couple audio recordings in the courtroom. One was Jen's 911 call, which sounded an awful lot like she was telling the police that John had in fact gotten out of the car the night before.
Broken and he was still
Do you recognize the voice on that tape?
Yes, that's mine.
Appear to be a true and accurate, at least that portion, a true and accurate reporting of the 911 call that you made that morning?
It was a very brief clip. I'd have to hear more.
Go ahead and play, starting at runtime 1:30 to about runtime 1:45.
46 years old. 46, how long has he been outside? I don't know. I don't know. He got out of the car and...
Stop. Was that you?
Yes, that was.
Is that the 911 call?
Yes, it was.
And what did you just say?
I said, I don't know. He got out of the car.
He got out of the car,
Mm-hmm.
is what you said, correct?
Yes.
And this was at 6:03 in the morning, correct?
Correct.
This is before you ever talked to Brian Albert?
Correct.
Before you ever talked to your sister Nicole Albert?
Correct.
Before you ever talked to Chris Albert?
Correct.
Before you ever talked to Julie Albert?
Correct.
You hadn't talked to anybody at this point other than Kerry Roberts, correct?
And Karen Reed.
And my client.
Correct.
And in that 911 call, you said he got out of the car, didn't you?
I did, because Karen Reed had told me that she had left him there.
Your words were, he got out of the car, correct?
Correct.
So again, Jen tries to explain it away, but that is an inconsistency with what she's testifying now. Anyway, the other audio recording that the defense played was someone's voicemail recording. I'm not sure whose, but that sounded like it was taken inside the car, and that also included Jen's voice from when she was making the 911 call in the background. It also included what sounded like Karen's voice in the background as she was hysterically and nonsensically screaming, Kerry, 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 and Jen, Jen, Jen at random intervals. So again, this was reinforcing the fact that Karen actually seems to have completely lost her mind by this point. Anyway, there were other inconsistencies that I want to just quickly touch upon. There was the fact that Jen apparently called Nicole Albert on January 29th at 6:07 and 6:08 a.m. Although confronted with the extraction data that said that both of these calls were picked up, Jen denied it. The data was, again, wrong. Interestingly, previously, Nicole had also denied this, but there was something about the way in which she vehemently denied this that was different than the way that Jen did it. And it just seemed like it was a more trustworthy denial. I don't know. I'm not so sure. Let me know what you think in the comments down below about your impressions about Nicole's denial of this aspect versus Jen's denial. Anyway, Jen was also asked about a call that she apparently made on the same day at 6:23 a.m. to Brian Albert. When confronted with phone forensic data that says that she deleted that call from her call logs, she denied it. The data, again, it was wrong. Then there was the issue of what she reported to Trooper Michael Proctor about the taillight. She said in court that she had told him that it was cracked. When she was shown Proctor's report on the conversation, which said that she had told him that the taillight had a crack in it, she said, "That's not what I said." When asked about deleting from her phone a series of unanswered phone calls she made to John O'Keefe between 12:29 and 12:50 a.m., once again, she denied it. Even though the extraction of her phone showed that she deleted that entire call log and it had to be recovered, she still denied it. The data, once again, was wrong. And this leads us to the very interesting place where Alan Jackson left his cross-examination for the day, talking about these numerous phone calls between 12:29 and 12:50 a.m.
There was a call at 12:14 a.m., correct?
Correct.
That was a call that you indicated was answered. You had a conversation with Mr. O'Keefe.
Correct.
There was a call at 12:18 and 47 seconds. That call also was answered by you. John O'Keefe made that phone call, correct?
Correct.
Then there's the 12:29 and 44 second call that you indicated was not answered.
Correct.
And that was a call to you, from you to him.
Correct.
There was a 12:41 call from you to John O'Keefe, correct? That was,
Correct.
there was a 12:41 and 54-second call from you to him, is that right?
Correct.
There was a 12:43 and 19-second call from you to him.
Correct.
12:46 a.m. and 16 seconds from you to him.
Correct.
12:47 and 52 seconds from you to him.
Correct.
And 12:50 and 37 seconds from you to him, correct?
Correct.
You saw in his extraction report that all of those calls after 12:18 were missed calls, correct?
In his report that you showed me?
Correct. In other words, the only two calls that were answered were the 12:14 and 12:18. Everything else was a missed call.
I believe so. I would have to refer to it again because I've seen so many reports.
And Ms. McCabe, according to the extraction reports that you've seen this morning, comparing yours to his, every single one of those calls was deleted off your phone, correct? According to the reports.
According to that report, yes.
Let me ask you another question. Have you ever misplaced your phone?
Yes.
Just in life, everybody does it, right?
Yes.
What's one of the first things you do if you're with your daughter or your husband or a friend and you're in your house and you misplace your phone? What do you do?
I'll ask them to call my phone.
Right. Even over and over and over, right?
Correct.
Could be as many as 5, 6, 7 times.
Usually I hear it the first or second time.
You're looking for a buzz or a ring, isn't that right?
Correct.
And you might do that if you're searching for a missing phone, correct?
Correct.
With regard to the calls that were deleted from your phone, you were asked about this under oath at another proceeding, weren't you?
Correct.
And you claimed at another proceeding that you had an explanation for all these missed calls, starting at 12:29, 12:41, 12:41, 12:43, 12:46, 12:47, 12:50. You have an explanation for that, right?
Can I see the report?
I'm asking you about your prior testimony.
And I'm asking,
About these calls,
yes, I'm asking, can I see it, please?
I'm asking you a different question. At this other proceeding, which you were under oath,
Yes.
right? You explained that these calls were what? These missed calls, incessant missed calls. What were they? You used a word. Matter of fact, 2 words.
I believe I used the word butt dials.
You claimed that every one of these calls was a butt dial. Is that right?
Yes.
So according to you, you literally butt dialed John O'Keefe's phone 6 times in the span of 19 minutes. Is that right?
I don't remember making any of those calls, so my assumption is I put my phone in my back pocket, and that was it.
When you dial someone by mistake, you hit a button, set your phone down, the phone has to be open, you'll hear that, right?
Correct.
Can't be locked, because it takes several iterations of movement to get a phone open. Face ID or password, right?
Correct.
So when you hit the button by mistake, walk away, that's a butt dial. People call butt dials. What happens with the call?
I assume it goes to voicemail?
It's a good assumption, because that's exactly what it does, isn't it? You've had a phone for a lot of years, right?
Yes.
It rings and rings and rings until it goes to voicemail.
Correct.
So in order to hang up that butt dial, you have to interact with that phone yet again, don't you?
Yes.
So if you had 6 butt dials, 7, I think it's 7 butt dials, you'd not only have to interact with the phone once to butt dial John, you'd then have to interact with it every single time to turn off that phone ringer so it doesn't go to voicemail, wouldn't you?
I suppose.
Which makes 14 interfaces with that phone over the course of 19 minutes. Is that right?
I mean, I guess I don't have it all right in front of me, but there were also text messages I was sending. So again, maybe I said, oh, shoot, I called them, and then I turned it off.
But your claim is you don't remember those incessant butt dials and those incessant hang-ups at all, correct?
I honestly don't.
So you would have had to forget that you interacted with, by the way, you'll agree that the phone extraction shows that John O'Keefe got no voicemails from you, right?
I didn't look, but
So that means you would have had to interact with that phone 14 times over the course of 19 minutes at the exact time frame that the Commonwealth suggests John O'Keefe lost his life.
Objection.
Sustained. You can ask that differently, and this will be your last question for today, please.
Yes, Your Honor. The period between 12:29 and 12:50, which is the exact period that you were, quote, butt dialing John multiple times, that's also the exact period that John O'Keefe was rendered incapacitated. Isn't that right?
Objection.
That's sustained.
So, all in all, day 15 requires me to revisit whether Jen McCabe should have been called on day 1 versus day 14. I said in the day 14 recap that the only reason I could see Jen getting called 39th instead of 1st was if the prosecution anticipated that her testimony would basically crumble on cross-examination. And at this point, I still think that she should have been called 1st. And she should have been prepped as the star witness to ensure that she understood the importance of consistency across the board with her testimony and not combating the other side on every single point. If she showed signs over time that she was not going to see the primary importance of consistency of her testimony and what she was going to act like on the stand if it was going to be like this, it would have made me question whether this was in fact a winnable case. And at this point, more than 3 weeks into this trial, I'm honestly questioning why this case was brought to trial in the first place. There's still plenty of trial left, of course, and the prosecution might just be holding on to some very credible, damning evidence that will completely break this case wide open and change everyone's perception and will cause the jury to convict her. But the question is, why would they be hiding it at this point when they have every single reason to get their best evidence out in front of the case to convince the jury early on in this trial? That does not make any sense to me. But those are my thoughts. What do you think? Did you see any of the same things that I did between Jen McCabe's direct and cross-examinations? Did you disagree with anything that I've said about her testimony in this video? Let us know in the comments down below. Also, thanks again to FlexiSpot for sponsoring this video. Be sure to check out FlexiSpot.com, linked in the description below, to check out their brand day sale offered once a year that will give you up to 60% off if you use my code BDC7. And otherwise, I hope you enjoyed this, or at least found it interesting or informative. And if you did, I would love it if you could hit the like button. It does help us with the YouTube algorithm gods. And if you're new here and you want to see more daily coverage of the Karen Read trial, both in our daily recaps and in our gavel to gavel live stream coverage, be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you can find out when the next video is out. See you on day 16.